So we went over, I've done 9 of the decks so far. I'm going to do the 10th here momentarily. I wanted to talk about some of the decks that I don't recommend playing in Modern right now. They aren't unplayable decks, but they just aren't ones that I would personally pick up to bring to a tournament because I think they have too many weaknesses and not enough strengths. The first one this is obviously Eggs. It won Pro Tour Return to Ravnica recently. And I think the main reason that it did so well is because of the abundance of Jund at that tournament, and the matchup against Jund is, I mean, it's not like they just destroy Jund, but I'd say that they don't really mind that matchup very much, and with the sideboard with the Leyline of Sanctities dealing with the Thoughtseize and Inquisition, it obviously got first, so it did really well, but I mean, Jund got second, so it's not like Jund did poorly either. This is a deck to be aware of, and when you're building a deck, you definitely want to make sure that you have some kind of sideboard plan, or at least know how to play against Eggs, because you will see it here and there. It's kind of a weird combo-y deck. If you want to play combo, I highly recommend you pick up Storm rather than Eggs. I just think it's more powerful. But this is actually an exact copy of the list from Stanislav Sivka, the guy who won it. So if you're looking to play Eggs, you can use this list, but I personally do not recommend playing this in the current metagame. And the second deck that I do not recommend playing, and we touched on this earlier, is right here. So basically just the blue-red version of Splinter Twin. I'm not a huge fan of this deck because I just don't think that it wins fast enough. I think that Storm and even Eggs combos off much faster than this deck does, because this deck it usually takes until turn 4 or 5 to really win the game, and even then, like, you can interact with it pretty easily. The addition of Mizium Skin, I've always wondered why people weren't playing cards like Vines of Vastwood and just splashing in the breeding pool, and you can even slash in the Ancient Grudge at the same time, because I always thought that this is like a really nice answer, especially now that Abrupt Decay is out. You obviously can't counterspell, you can't dispel the Abrupt Decay, so having Mizium Skin is nice, but I just think this deck is a little bit too slow, and if you're looking for a Splinter Twin style deck to play, I highly recommend you look back at the Kiki Pod list that I posted, because that's a deck that I feel is much more consistent against the field and is much harder to beat. I just noticed there's 14 cards in this sideboard, but it doesn't matter because I don't recommend playing this anyways. And then the third deck that I'm going to talk about of decks that I would not recommend is right here. This is a deck you want to be aware of when you're building. Red deck wins can definitely catch a lot of decks off guard, especially when you go turn 1 fetch land into, a shock land, and then Thoughtseize your opponent, and then you realize they have a bunch of burn spells, and you're not too happy about it. That's pretty much this deck's main strength, is just kind of hoping that they're taking a bunch of damage with a greedy mana base, and, just aggroing them out. I think a lot of the combo decks are much faster than this deck, and also have more interaction with their opponent than this one does. This one has access to cards like Searing Blaze, which is cool, but other than that, you're really just kind of nugging them for 3, then 6, then 9, and hoping they don't play any Kitchen Finks. And I think this deck is just a little too linear for me, and with Deathrite Shaman, couldn't think of the card, being more popular, now people just have a bunch of main deck life gain, and so it's like them exiling your Hellspark and gaining 2 life from the graveyard seems pretty terrible. If you are going to play this deck, a lot of people will go the mono red version. I recommend the mono red version is much cheaper. I do recommend that you play the black, because if you think that your opponent is going to be light on removal, then Dark Confidant is very, very good out of the sideboard. Like if you go up against a combo deck, for example, siding this card in is very powerful. I don't recommend playing it in the main board because I think it's a little too slow for what you're wanting to do. You really just want to 3-3-3-3-3 them and kind of hope you win the die roll, and yeah. But game 2, you have, I don't know, the sideboard options aren't great. You're kind of a monocolor deck more or less, but yeah, you can play red deck wins if you want. I think that there's too much life gain in the format, and it's just not fast enough to consistently win. So, next deck, And I've already talked about this deck quite a bit. You all know I do not like this deck. I don't like playing against it, and I would never take this to a tournament. This isn't, I'm going to rearrange this a little bit. Spectral is a 3-drop. I mean, the deck's not awful, but it's just like most people play this deck because of how cheap it is and easy to buy into, and that's not a reason. That's not a good enough reason for me to play a deck in Modern. Again, on this website, we talk purely competitively, and so if you're looking for a competitive deck to play with, I don't recommend you pick this one up. However, if you do decide to play this deck, this is a list that I would start with. I don't know. It's pretty straightforward. It's just gain a bunch of life, win with Sarah Ascendant, and Honor of the Pure. Spectral Procession can actually be very, very good with the Honor of the Pure, and the people have been playing Lingering Souls and Jund lately, so people are starting to see that having a bunch of spirits is actually really good against cards like Liliana and whatnot. This deck is very weak to Bonfire of the Damned, and if you look back at my Rug Delver list, I mentioned the weakness to Soul Sisters, and that's why I actually included the Bonfire. Well, this is one of the reasons that I included Bonfire, was because I was seeing Soul Sisters in so many of the 1v1 queues on Moto when I was doing testing. So, yeah, I needed to have some kind of answer to that. If you do want to play Soul Sisters, I actually have a route that you can go with it, that my friend Ryan Richardson, and he's a testing partner of mine, has been working on, that I actually approve of this deck. I think it's fine. The biggest reason I would not play this next deck right here, is it's not very good against Jund. I don't have a ton of testing with the deck, but Ryan mentioned that there is a big weakness against Jund, and that's one of the reasons he probably wouldn't take it to a tournament against Jund right now. He recently added blue to the deck for the access to Supreme Verdict and Meddling Mage, which I thought was interesting, and this deck just splashes. It's so easy to splash colors in Modern that there's really no reason not to take Soul Sisters to the next level and like cut cards like Soul's Attendant and whatnot, because those cards are just terrible. But this is much, much better. I like the access to Lightning Helix because, again, it's like life gain but also removal at the same time. Hide and Seek is like one of my favorite cards. I don't know why this card doesn't see more play other than its casting cost is very, very awkward. But this card's just awesome. Having, like, going up against Tron, being able to seek out their Emrakul and gain 15, because Emrakul is their main win condition. So, like, that's just such a house against that matchup. And then there's a ton of relevant artifacts and enchantments in the format, and being able to put it on the bottom for 2 at instant speed it's awesome. So definitely playing 4 between the main board and the sideboard. I actually like this deck quite a bit. I hate to admit it because it's a version of Soul Sisters, and I don't really like Soul Sisters. I just kind of have I don't know why I don't like it, but I don't. But if you are going to play a version, if you played this version right here, I wouldn't fault you for it. I think this is viable. Just be aware that when you go up against Jund that you might have some trouble. Let's see. There is 2 more decks. One of them I know very little about, and I'm going to bring that one up here, is Scapeshift. I honestly haven't tweaked with Scapeshift at all. This is the deck list that got 3rd, 4th at Pro Tour Return to Ravnica, so it obviously did pretty well. I don't have a lot to talk about it, but I know, I'm aware that Valakut recently got unbanned. I was actually really surprised when they came out with the bannings in the first place that Valakut was banned, because I didn't think that was that overpowered of a card, but they banned it and then they unbanned it, and I was like, okay, I mean, not like, I don't think that Valakut is really gonna like change the metagame very much. This version seems fine. I'd really like to see like a strict like red-green version that just plays lands and plays cards like Beast Within, and I don't know, I feel like everyone's trying to combo with cards like Prismatic Omen and whatnot, and obviously you play Scapeshift no matter what, but just like why not play like a red-green version with 4 Valakuts and just play lands like the original standard version did? And I don't know, maybe that's a little bit too slow, but if you could incorporate some interactive red-green spells like Beast Within, maybe it would be a viable deck. I don't know. But this is a deck I don't know a ton about, but I haven't seen it popping up anywhere, and I haven't had a lot of testing, so I can't say too much about it. It looks like it's weak against Spell Snare, and that's not a good thing to be weak against. But Yeah, if you want to copy this list, feel free. The last deck that I'm going to talk about, and the deck that I actually like the most out of this whole entire gauntlet, is Merfolk. I I kind of have I love Merfolk. It's a sweet deck. It's a sweet little like aggro. I like aggro control. Playing cards like Delver of Secrets and whatnot, and then just protecting it. This deck's very cool. Again, uses another one of my favorite cards, Aether Vial, which I think is people haven't really utilized this card in Modern yet, and I think Merfolk is one of the few decks that's really started to do that. This is a really generic deck list. There's a couple ways you can go with it. I mean, you're really just playing a bunch of Lords and some efficient, cheap counter spells. Playing the best counter spell in Modern, Mana Leak, obviously. And you have access to some sweet cards like Spell Snare and whatnot. This deck's pretty good. It'll catch you off guard. It's one of the reasons why you'll see Combust in most of my lists, because not only is it good against Kiki Pod and Splinter Twin, but it's also very good against this deck, being able to take down a fat Lord and having it be uncounterable, unpreventable, all that. Except for, well, no, Kira. Yeah, it would go through Akira, so that's pretty sweet. But yeah, this is an interesting deck, and if you want to pick up Merfolk, start here. I'm actually waiting for Return to Ravnica, Gatecrash, because it seems like they're kind of going along with this little like blue-green Simic Merfolk theme, and I'd really like to see Merfolk bleed into some other colors, because I don't think it needs to be mono blue. I definitely think you could add a card like Lightning Bolt for people who splash red. I don't disagree with that at all. Just Lightning Bolt gives you a little bit more reach and maybe some arguably better removal than like Vapor Snag. Although I do like Vapor Snag in this deck. But if you're looking to play Merfolk, this is a really good list to start with. And be aware that once Gatecrash spoilers start coming out, if they print some good 1-2 drop Merfolk, that this deck actually could be very viable in Modern. It's not really missing that many pieces to be a solid deck, but it's just like I feel like it's a little too slow and not interactive enough to really be tier 1. So I guess